All right, the next problem we're going to do is 9x minus 5y equals negative 1 and 3x plus 5y equals 15. So the first step you want to do is check and make sure that everything is lined up. And it is, you've got x on top of x, y on top of y, number on top of number. So we're all good there. Second thing you want to see is there a coefficient that is the same for one of the variables? So for the x's we got 3 and 9, for the y's we got 6 and negative 5, so that doesn't work. So the next thing we have to do then is multiply one of the equations so that the coefficients could be the same. So let's take a look at each one. So let's look at the x's first, so 3 and 9. So you're going to ask yourself, what's the lowest common multiple? So in other words, what's the smallest number that both 3 and 9 can go into? And that number is 9, because 9 goes into 9 and 3 goes into 9. So that's one thing. Then you're going to ask yourself the same things about the y. So what's the smallest number that both negative 5 and both 6 can go into? And that's going to be 30. So how do you decide which one to multiply? Well, you know that if the lowest common multiple is 9 for the x's, you only have to multiply the bottom equation, because you already have a 9 up here, so you only have to multiply the bottom equation for it to match. Whereas if you're trying to get negative 30 or positive 30 for the y's, you have to multiply both equations, because you'll have to multiply the 5 and you'll have to multiply the 6 in order to get to 30. So you always want to choose the one that has the least work. So I'm going to multiply this bottom equation by 3, because that will give me a 9, which will end up matching. But remember, you also want a positive and a negative factor. So this is positive, so I want this 3 to be negative. So I don't have to do anything to the first equation, so I'm just going to copy it down, 9x minus 5y equals negative 1. But I'm going to have to multiply my second equation by negative 3. So 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. 6y times negative 3 is negative 18y. And 15 times negative 3 is negative 45. And we're going to add those together. 9x minus 9x, that cancels out. Negative 5y minus 18y, negative 5 minus 18 gives me negative 23. Y is equal to negative 1 minus 45 is negative 46. Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 23, excuse me. So y will be by itself, and negative 46 divided by negative 23 is 2. So y is equal to 2. Remember, you cannot stop there. You still have to solve for the x. So you're going to plug in this 2 to either one of the equations. I'm going to go with the first one. So 9x minus 5 times 2 is equal to negative 1. 5 times 2 is 10, so 9x minus 10 is equal to negative 1. And then add 10 to both sides, so 9x is equal to 9. And then divide by 9, divide by 9. I'm going to go over here so I have a little bit more room. So x is equal to 1. All right, from here, you're just going to double check and make sure you did it correctly. So plug in the 1 and the 2 to either equation. I'm going to plug it into the second. So 3 times 1 plus 6 times 2 is equal to 15. And then you're going to check your calculator, make sure it's good. So 3 times 1 plus 6 times 2 is equal to 15. 15 is equal to 15, so yes, it checks out. All right, the last example, 6 and 7, you're just choosing which method to solve, substitution or elimination, but you don't actually need to solve it. So you're just looking at them to see which one makes most sense to use. So for number 6, I would say the easiest way to figure out which method to use is to see if a variable is isolated, because if a variable is isolated, then it's going to be substitution. And then check and see if the variables are lined up, because if it's lined up, it's going to be elimination. So for number 6, we've got the x's on top of x. Ooh, sorry, y'all, there's supposed to be a y right here. Slight typo. The y's on top of y's, and then numbers on top of the numbers. So it should read, make sure you fill that in. It's supposed to be negative 5x minus 7y is equal to negative 10. 2x minus y is equal to negative 3. All right, so because the x's are on top and the y's are on top and the numbers are on top of each other, this would make sense to use elimination. because the variables and numbers are lined up. You don't actually have to solve it for x and y, you just need to tell me which method you would use. For number 7, you've got y equals -1 and -2x minus y equals 3. You'll notice that you have the first equation y is already isolated for. So for this one, substitution makes the most sense because a variable is isolated already. And that's all.